Hi everyone, this is Allison Waken, and this is part 2 of my Everyday Album series. So last time we talked about getting those photos printed. That seems to be the hardest part for me, is sitting down and getting all those photos printed out. That's why I do it all at once. That's why I like it done, because I can make several spreads from all of those photos I printed. So today I just wanted to talk about supplies that I'm going to be using to complete my page and inserting it into the album. I have a blog post linked below that links to supplies that you'll need and maybe some that you'll want to make your album creation a little bit easier. But as far as supplies go, you saw one of them yesterday, which was the big paper cutter. This just makes it really easy to trim those 4x6s into 3x4s, since that's how I print them. You'll also need a kit of some sort. Now, Becky Higgins, as I mentioned before, has her own kits. I like using the Studio Calico kits, and this is a peek at August kit. I can't show it to you yet, but I will when I can. And this is all I'm going to be using to make the page that I will share with you in the next part of our series. So it really doesn't take a lot of product. That's why I love the kits, because it has everything that you would need, including some extra embellishments and things like that. I also get the add-on kits, which makes it fun and makes the main kit lasts a little bit longer. I use a dry adhesive gun, which if you haven't seen it before, you basically hold the trigger down and you're laying a piece of dry glue or kind of like a tape onto the paper so that you can stick something on top of it. I use this sometimes, but most of the time to attach things together, I use my tiny attacher. It's really dry and hot in Phoenix, and I think that kind of tends to lead towards the adhesive's not sticking well in my album. So I'll go back in some older albums and find that things aren't sticking very well. So anything that's attached with a stapler obviously is still together. So I try to use this more often than not. Pens, I usually just use whatever pens are laying around. I happen to have a lot of these right now, which is the Sharpie pen, the Fine Point, and the Pentel RSVP Fine Point. They're not super fancy scrapbooking pens, but they're ones that I like to write with, which is important. If I'm doing a lot of journaling, I'll do it on the computer just because I can get more in, makes it easier. Scissors, I'll use probably these little ones, but I like my big ones too for cutting larger pieces of paper or longer cuts, maybe from the printables if I use something like that. So scissors, I have lots of these little ones laying around because I tend to lose them all the time. I mentioned before that the Studio Calico kits come with stamps. So you'll need a stamp pad, an acrylic stamp block, and a stamp ink. I like StazOn because it doesn't bleed on photos and it stays really good. I almost always use black. It's just my style. I like black and white a lot, so my stamps usually end up being black. You'll obviously need photos. That's the most important part. And you've already printed those out, or I've already printed those out, I should say. And I do them in big batches like this because, like I said, that tends to be the hardest part for me for whatever reason, is getting the photos printed out. And then you'll need page protectors. So the traditional Project Life kit that Becky Higgins created uses 12 by 12 page protectors, and that is what I used to begin with. But I found that the albums were just too big for me. They were too big for the kids to lug around, and they were getting dropped and things like that. So I switched to the 9 by 12 from Studio Calico, which I actually love because I like the more rectangular orientation of the page protectors. And there are all kinds of different versions of them. A lot of people find out they use the same version over and over just because they like to or they're used to it. I try to mix mine up a little bit. And then you'll need your album. I mentioned last time this is my 9 by 12 album from Studio Calico, and it's just smaller and easier to handle, so I've really been enjoying this size. And that's it. That's all I'm going to use to create my page, which you'll see in the next part of the series. And I try to make things really simple but really fun, and it still works with my style. So obviously if you wanted to do a little more complicated pages or cards into your album, it would take a little more time and maybe some more supplies. But I'm just showing you how I do it and how I make it work for me, which is what's so great about it, is it can work for anyone with any style or any skill level. So if you like this series, please subscribe And we'll see you next time when I am creating the full everyday album spread.